Hi, it's Anne. Thanks for stopping by. So, yet another surprise came my way today. I was going to be working on something that I had in mind for my book journal and my reader's journal. So, thank you for your positive response to that idea. And I got out this little pack of these little library cards that I got at the thrift store. They've been sitting around a few months. I had other library, the little checkout cards from when Dan and I were volunteers at our grandson's school library. This was something different. I got this at our arts and crafts thrift store here in Portland. I thought I'm just going to coffee dye some of those cards and see what I can do with them. And in fact, I did do that. You can see some of the results here. But what to my wondering eyes should appear as I unbundled this little stack of what I thought was nothing but library checkout cards. Look at these little pockets that were in that same bundle. This is a reenactment because I've actually already discovered that, but I wanted you to see what it was like. Don't want you to miss any of the drama here at the Shea Kenlin. Look at these cute little pockets. They're very utilitarian, but somebody has stamped on them from the library of, and I guess, you can, if you have friends borrow books or something, you want to have a record of who's where, you can write that down. I have never really seen anything like this with for personal use. I've seen these from the library of that people stamp in their books. Look at this cute little one though. I think this one was, this was printed on this sheet from the library, and somebody has written Celia. Oh, Celia, who were you loaning books to? But I thought they were cute. They were, they're very utilitarian the way they were doing, but I think we can make some super cute, unusual library pockets to put our checkout cards in for a book journal. I love this from the library of Celia. She wants to make certain that copy of Black Beauty or, whatever it is she loaned out comes back to her. But let's look at this because I think they can be super cute in a journal. And they're just a little bit different and they're easy. Let's see, Celia's is a little bit stuck together here. I looked at I don't think I actually took her card out of here. Let's see if we can coax it out. There we go. That looks like a vintage little card, doesn't it? With that font and everything on it. Anyway, this little pocket, it's just going to be cute. It's going to be cute. I did a little bit of practicing because I made one that was sort of bigger than this, and then the card sort of rattled around on the inside, and I really didn't want that. These are, I wanted it to look really nice and tidy, like it is, in fact, a library pocket. So I did some measuring that I don't normally do. You, of course, can make any size library pocket that you wish, but in the measuring, well, let me just measure here and show you. This is about 3 3 1/8 across and about 3 1/2 up and down. So I decided to round up what I was shooting for to be just a little bit larger, not a whole lot, but I'm going to make mine 3 1/4 across and 3 1/2 up and down. One thing that's kind of nice about these pockets is there's some sort of there's a little fold over part here. So you don't lose any of the pocketable real estate in there. It's the construction makes this as wide as we need it to be. And let's just go ahead and look at the formula I came up with. Whatever width you want this to be, take that width, double it, and add 1/2 inch. And the height, whatever you want your height to be, and add 1/2 inch. For me, this is going to turn out to be, I want it to be 3 1/4 wide, and so we're going to cut 7 inches by 4. This is going to become clear in a moment. What shall I use? I've cut 7. I really like this mushroom paper. Here's a little piece of book page that has, that I just did a bunch of gel printing and brayer off acrylic paint on. Maybe we'll use this. That might show up nicely. I was looking also at a calendar page. I think this would be great for a calendar page. If you're using anything that has any kind of a picture on it, know that as you're looking, we'll just go ahead and with this one. Anything that you're looking at, if your image is sort of centered here on the lower right-hand corner, you're going to be okay. This section here is going to be the front of your card, backed a little bit away from the front, or from this right-hand edge. We're going to fold this here. Let's just bring Celia here to keep us company. So we're going to fold our sheet with a fold on the left-hand side, but we're going to, we want a little bit of overage on the right-hand side. So I'm just going to flip it like this. Let me mark the front here so we don't disorient ourselves. That's going to be the front. Here's Celia. I wonder what she read. Maybe it wasn't a child, I don't know, but it kind of looks like a child's handwriting. Okay, there's our front. I want this edge to come about 1/2 inch from this edge. So they're not going to meet up exactly. Now, I want this to fold over here. And I want it also to fold up. So we're going to fold all these layers on top of each other and bring it up again about 1/2 inch or a little bit less, whatever. Sometimes the paper tells you where it wants to fold. The up and down part doesn't really matter that much. There we go, but we're not gluing yet. Now, here's a pencil. I want this sort of angle here to be about from there to about there. So I'm going to open it up again. I know it's probably hard to see. I've been doing a lot of those lately. There's that mark, and here's that mark. So we're going to fold along that edge. Now these fold marks are going to give us an idea of where we want to cut. There we go. So we can see, yeah, that fold is already there, and this is kind of how that's going to show up. There isn't anything really interesting on this book page side, so I think I'm going to cover that with some text. I guess I might as well go ahead and do that now. Let me pull out something from this novel that's sitting here. I have taken the insides of that book out, and that's actually going to be the cover of my book journal. And I'm just going to add that in there, and it doesn't even have to come all the way to the fold or go all the way to the bottom. I really just want to cover that corner. If this were like a double-sided scrapbook paper or something like that, you wouldn't have to do anything at all there. I'll use this as a glue sheet. Sorry, I'm doing what we call the boarding house reach there. And there we go. Yeah, when I saw that in the stack, I thought, oh, don't know that I've ever really seen a library pocket like that. We're all familiar with the more traditional library pockets, and we're going to do one of those in a moment as well. Now, I could, if my paper was really thick, I could just cut it here, but because I would like, this is reasonably thick, I'm going to wait a second to glue this down. I'm going to hold on to this little piece though, so that I can reinforce here. Now let's begin to do some cutting. I want to, maybe it would be easier if I marked here. I'm going to cut off this section here, if this helps. And I want to preserve this section here, down in this corner, because that's what's going to wrap around to the back. I'm going to preserve this section here. Is that, do I want that? Yeah, I want that towards the back as well. I'm going to cut off this section that's within this fold. I'm going to cut all of that off, if that makes sense. I think that'll make sense. Scissors, let's come here. All right, I'm going to come in and come to that fold. Remember, this was the fold that went around to the back. I've cut into that fold, or as far as that fold goes. And I'm going to come in just a little bit to the inside of that fold so that it doesn't bind up. And at this point, I could go ahead and glue this down so it's not flapping and getting annoying. Okay, so this piece I'm going to keep. This is the piece I'm going to cut away. I'm going to come I'm sorry, I know it's hard to see these folds, but you know, you've done things like this. You know where you want to cut. And this doesn't have to be super precise because we're going to be covering it up anyway. Now we can see that this is going to come around to the back and this is going to come up. I'm going to cut out, just to remove the bulk, this one little piece here. There we go. And I'm going to come in with my art glitter glue and glue the whole thing together. There we are. And there we are. And we have sacrificed absolutely no pocket space at all here because our edges are all encased by other pieces of fabric that are jumping in to do duty. Now, Celia's pocket did not have a rounded corner. It was a little rounded here. I think I'm going to have a tribute to that, and but do it on that outside edge because that's just easier for me. I don't think Celia would mind too much there. And these are all so nicely encased. You could make these any size, of course. I just wanted to show you that formula, though, in case you do have a specific width that you wanted to have. I'll write that down again. Whatever width you want the piece to be, double it and add a ½ inch for that little overage, that fold over. And the height, whatever height you want it to be, add a ½ inch for this little fold over. Sort of like a little bit like a seed packet. Let's make a different kind, and then we can decorate them both. Why don't we do that? So we, let's see, this is going to, however I want to decorate this checkout card. That's going to fit nicely in there. And it's a little bit wider than Celia's, but I just wanted there to be just a little bit of wiggle room, but not so much that it's rattling around. Who could Celia be? Oh, that's one thing I love getting things with people's names in them. It just makes you imagine, makes you remember that there's real people that had some of these things. This is a slightly more traditional library pocket that I pulled out of a book we were disassembling on volunteer duty. But the kind that I was thinking of is the one that's more traditional yet. And it is sort of shaped like this. I didn't have any, you know, specific library pockets, but, you know, looking up online, you know, the measurements, they're generally constructed like this. And if you're to buy them commercially, which you can do, their measurements are going to be about 3.5 by 5, maybe slightly less. Let's see if we can make one out of, let's just use another book page. Should we do that? I want to bring Celia back in here. I'm sure she was a nice girl. There we go. Pull out a couple of pages of Robin Hood here. And we'll make both of these, and then we'll just do a little decorating. Now, you do not have to double this up, but I just decided that I would, just to give it a little bit more sturdiness. Sorry, Celia. I feel like I'm getting really eccentric. I'm now, you know, I talked to you here in my craft room, and now I'm talking to imaginary owners of some of my craft supplies. All right, double this page. Now, I know from having measured this before, because I want the see, this is 7.25 wide, and I want it to end up being about 3.5. So 3.5 is half of 7. My overlap can be about 1/4 of an inch there. So I feel satisfied with that. I'm going to fold this. I guess I'm going to put this half page on the inside. And you don't have to have that seam, that join, be right in the middle. You can if you wish. You're basically making a tube, and I'm overlapping about 1/4 of an inch. I've given myself a little bit of grace room there. Now, I'm going to bring, because I want the whole thing to be about 3.5 by 5. How closely did I get there? Ah, it's as though I knew what I was doing, as though I had measured, something I don't normally do. All right, now I'm going to fold, this is the bottom, and I'm going to fold all thicknesses up here. You've probably done this a million times. There's nothing that unusual about it. But I thought, you know, having a library pocket in a book journal, that's just something I needed to do. All right, so there's our bottom there. I'm going to be cutting out some of that bulk, but I'm going to do all of my cutting and folding before I do any of my gluing. Now, I'm going to want to have this little, you know, front part. So I think I'm going to measure here. I want it to come down about 1.25 inches. So that's around where that Y is. I'm going to mark that here very lightly. And then I'm going to open it up again. And I'm going to cut along this fold right down to that edge. I mean, right down to that mark, sorry. There we go. Now I'm going to cut a little bit to the inside there because I want to relieve any bulk from that because we're going to be turning this down. I could just cut this off if I was using a heavy paper. I would cut right off on that line, but this isn't very heavy paper, so I might as well give it just a little more strength. And I'm going to fold along this line. And I think I will go ahead and glue that down. It doesn't have to be glued within an inch of its life. There we go. Now, I did have a little template, didn't I? What I want to do is I want to cut in on these edges, and I do want to have that be, mark, I want to cut along this edge an angle, and I want to cut an angle along this edge. So I'm just marking them so I can, yeah, that one and that one, because I have some unglued edges here. All right, I'm going to pinch that, but not fold it. I had made a little template earlier for, in the interest of slightly greater precision. It's not showing up, so I'm just going to show you how I'm doing this. I'm just holding these together, and I'm cutting through all thicknesses as straight as I can. And there we go. Now, we're going to open it up again, and we're going to cut out the bottom. This is the back of our piece, this flap and this flap. And we're going to cut out that excess paper that's on the back side, because our little front flap is going to fold around and encase that. And we don't need that extra bulk. There we go. Now we can see how this all folds together. Let's ink it and glue it together. Didn't do a whole lot of inking on the on our little angled library pocket, because I guess I just didn't think of it. I inked around the outside. I guess I could do a little bit there. More pro forma than anything else. Oh, didn't need to ink on that side. That's why I'll hold it together. And these will be, with these being a smaller size, they really are going to be just fine in a smaller journal, which mine is actually going to be. The pages of my book journal are actually going to be folded. They're only going to be 5 by 7 1/4. I have them here. So see, that's a really nice size for that one. We'll come back to that after we've decorated a couple. Okay, in with the gluing. I'm going to glue right along the top on the downward facing piece, and right along the top on the upward facing piece. Whoops, and I set a project on top of a gluey surface. That's not very good planning. And this little bottom flap, just encasing that bottom. And here is our other library pocket. Don't have a completely straight join here, so I'm going to kind of even that up. There we go. There we go. There are our two little library pockets. Let's decorate them. They need to get dressed up a little bit, don't they? Okay, what do I have here? Oh my. I hadn't thought too far ahead. I've got a few little scraps over here. What do I have here? I have a little bit of tape. I have some stamped stuff. I have a little bit of fabric. I have an eye. I do have some books. I was going to save them and wait until later. I have this little, I did some little stamping here. I think I kind of like that. I just used one of my rubber stamps. I have one set of stamps with book images on them, and I'm going to be using that quite a lot in this journal, and I just stamped on some paper that I put some ink down on. I actually did this with strips of masking tape that I inked. I will do that technique one day soon. It's pretty handy just to stamp on top of, but I think that's all that needs, don't you? Grab this scrap and we'll get a little glue stick on there. Am I about running out of this glue stick? Oh, I wish it lasted longer. Of course, they are workhorses for me in my craft room. There we go. I might come in and stamp some little numbers on there, and I'm not certain how I'm going to decorate this, but that's going to be cute. I think these checkout cards would be really super if you were wanting to keep a list of books that you had read. You know, you could just, you could write, the Louisa May Alcott, Little Women, and then just write down your thoughts about that book, and then just keep them in here for a memory. How nice would that be? All pre-printed and easy for you to fill out. Utilitarian, but useful, and I would say a little bit whimsical. Now, how shall we do this one? I have a couple. I took those rubber stamps and I did fussy cut a couple of them out. That one's kind of cute. My fingers are sticky. That's kind of cute, but it needs something to ground it. I could put something like this behind it. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. I don't really know what that was doing here, but I actually kind of like it. There. I'll ink these and see if I can get those edges a little more dressed up. There we go. And there we go. I think I'm just going to sit here and make more of both of these kinds of pockets. Yes, I'll put this one down first. And we'll hope that that art glitter glue holds nicely, since this is a painted surface. It has acrylic paint on it, and it can be a little bit persnickety as far as what it allows itself to adhere to. It's not like an ordinary book page. This is just a paper scrap that I did some stamping on. Don't know what it's doing here. Let's see. That could be nice, but I kind of like this one. Yep, let's go with this one since we have it already inked. Yeah, I did a lot of coffee dyeing this morning. Not only those library checkout cards, but I'm making so many journals these days that I have been running out of coffee dyed paper for my signatures. So I have a whole big batch that's drying in the sink. It won't probably be completely dry until tomorrow morning. The stuff on the top layer was done. But, all right, do we have these finished, my friends? I think we do. I think we do. Where's my other, I don't know what happened to my other checkout card, but I'll just put this one of Celia's into the pocket that she inspired, and I think that's going to be just fine. Enjoy this, folks. Let's look again. This is how this is going to look on. Oh. And here we go. Both of these are going to be so cute in a book journal. I hope you have fun making library pockets, whichever way you choose to do them. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.